Okay, so this is supposed to be a workshop. I will give a presentation on the prospects for funding under Horizon Europe. So I'll be talking about money, and Robbie will be talking about networks, community. Sorry, better word. Okay. So ideally, we bring the money to the community so that the community can actually do something besides talk. So I'll first talk about so what's happening under Horizon Europe, which is being established now, and how the various strategic directions play into that. So I'm going to be talking about different sort of broad instruments. One is the Horizon Europe money per se, and under that, the ERC funding, Marie Sklodowska-Curie, Cluster 6 particularly, cost actions, and some new things that are going on called missions. And then the partnerships that have come out of the IRANET programs, and then other kinds of collaborative research and how that's being funded. And then go on with the science policy. So firstly, regarding the overall framework, there's altogether Horizon Europe has like 100 billion euros in it. And the Pillar 2, which is the one that is funding EU projects as you conventionally think of that, particularly the ones dealing with food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment, has altogether 9 billion in it. And while this has been developing, we've been trying to push ideas of nutritional security, food and nutritional security, and environmental sustainability connected with human health and so on. So, and to try to get the Commission, as it's forming these efforts, to cut across the different funding initiatives so that things that deal with food are not just stuck in the one package, but actually touch on other things, including human nutrition. So regarding who can participate in the calls so far, the negotiations have, besides the member state organizations, Switzerland has come in. They cannot coordinate Horizon Europe programs, but can participate in manage work packages. And the funding there is provided by Switzerland directly. There's been for any of you who have contacts in Ukraine, it's good to know that there was an agreement signed at the beginning of June associating Ukraine to the Horizon Europe. And they can fully participate on equal terms with any member state or organization. And the money is coming from the EU. They don't have to contribute financially themselves. And that's there's also separate funding available through the ERA for Ukraine and Horizon for Ukraine and other initiatives providing funding for researchers. And then as of the end of June, there were a whole host of agreements signed or at various stages of negotiation with countries around the world and on this continent. And the UK will be associated by a means of a protocol. It hasn't happened yet, as far as I understand, but it should. That will provide funding from the UK. Canada, negotiations with Canada and New Zealand are ongoing, but the first stage has been passed. My understanding regarding the U.S. is that it currently can participate, but the funding has to come through U.S. funding agencies, and there are some initials for that. So now for the ERC itself, currently there's only one call open, and that's in the proof of concept category. And then the Cluster 6 is really where most of the funding opportunities are. The Cluster 6 now is divided into what they call destinations, and I've highlighted what destinations so to speak, might be of use for barley researchers. Biodiversity is one of them. We've had all these talks about barley's spontaneum relative, and so that also land races, that comes into biodiversity. Food systems clearly does. The bioeconomy sector, environment, and climate certainly do. So in terms of specific calls that are in the current draft, that's not yet finalized, it should be finalized in the autumn. Crop wild relatives for sustainable agriculture sounds like things that we've heard of here today. Biodiversity friendly practices, breeding for integrated pest management, promoting minor crops. So then you'd have to actually argue that barley's a minor crop. Well, number 4, I don't know if that's minor or somewhere in between. Then under sustainable farming systems, there's tackling outbreaks of plant pests. So we've been hearing how climate change is affecting spread of disease, and pests are also in that category. Then there's transforming food systems for health and sustainability. And there are lots of things in there where there would be room for barley as well. And then one thing to mention is there's targeted international cooperation that's aimed specifically at the African Union. So if you have partners in Ethiopia or someplace where barley is of interest, there's potential there in several calls. And then for sustainable bio-based systems and biotech and the bioeconomy, there's bioprospecting and the production of bioactive compounds. So I'm not sure whether alcohol is considered bioactive, but there may be certain things with barley that could fit there. And then knowledge sharing. There are calls for so-called governance, and there's possibilities of forming thematic networks in that area. So that's also in several headings under governance. So we attempted to, so I'm wearing an EPSO hat now again because this has been compiled and done through EPSO. So we attempted to get a call in for developing more diverse fruit, vegetable, and cereal crops for diverse diets and human health and resilient production. So that wasn't yet incorporated, so we hope that will be incorporated into Destination 2 for food systems in the next round. So, I mean, the idea is basically to have, if there's funding aimed at diversity of production, then barley is not the number 1 crop, has some benefit. So regarding cost actions, the next collection date is in October. So cost is going forward still strong. It's actually the number of projects to be funded is growing. And for those of you in the EPSO organizations, you can go to the members only site where there was a briefing they're recording from the briefing on how the cost action is growing and how many things will be funded. Okay, so now for some other areas where there's funding coming through, there's this new concept of missions, and the mission had behind it the idea of like a space mission. You know, that there was a mission to put a man on the moon or whatever. So it's a very large, integrated funding effort linked to societal needs. For us, actually, there's only one perhaps that is really clear, and that's the different missions are handled by different directorates general. And so for agriculture, the mission is on soil. So it's a soil deal for Europe. And this is under construction. So basically it started with the observation that there are a lot of unhealthy soils in Europe, and that also carbon sequestration is a major target as a way of trying to mitigate climate change. So These missions also have a number of new features, which I'll get to, such as lighthouses. So the soil mission has a number of different components and many different projects under it. But part of it, improving so soil biodiversity, some other aspects would be possible for those who work primarily with crops, and in our case, barley. For example, reducing fertilizer use by 20%. So this comes directly to nitrate and nutrient use efficiency. So the missions are implemented in various, this particular mission, various ways. One, which I want to emphasize, is this area two, which is these so-called living labs and lighthouses. These are new components. And living labs, it's basically an idea of pulling together real life setting, meaning a farm or a cluster of farms, active user involvement, so besides scientists, farmers, multi-stakeholder, so people from different sectors, and also co-creation, which means having basically input. I mean, this is the concept. I really personally don't understand how these things will work in practice, but there are some sources of information available already about what living labs are and how they're formed, and there's some organizations who are setting these up. So there's also a concept of a lighthouse. A lighthouse is not a place that you avoid rocks, but a lighthouse means that sheds light on the whole surrounding area, meaning this is a metaphor in this case. So it means that they're a center of excellence in essence. So some place where practice is going very well for a particular goal, and people from various sectors can come and see and learn how that's done. So basically, it's an idea of theory of development, how to move research into practice more rapidly. I think that's what they're thinking. And of course, multi-actors, I think you've heard that before. So farmers and farmer groups and so on, food processors, consumer associations, and the whole lot, and government associations, they need to be included. And co-creation, which has become a very fashionable term, which I think is basically productive collaboration. So there are regarding barley, it's idea of choice of crops and crop combinations that might be included in this sort of soil deal, and how to apply these in farming systems will be part of what they're doing. Okay, and then moving onward, then there are partnerships. So these are evolving from the IRA-nets, which many of us have participated in. The partnerships involve funding at cooperative funding in different levels from different sources. There are a very large number of partnerships. You probably, I don't know if you can read the text where you are, but the two that are relevant, one is on circular bio-based Europe, and the other is on rescuing biodiversity to safeguard life on Earth. So we've heard about biodiversity already from the beginning this morning with Martin's talk. So one of the partnerships is sustainable food systems and agroecology and living lab. The agroecology living labs will be in there. Another is the incorporation of big data into agriculture and into breeding. Okay, so these are basically still being assembled as to how they'll be structured and how they'll work in practice. This is a SFS, in this case, is a partnership for sustainable food systems. So obviously that also applies to us. So of the Horizon Europe partnerships, there are sustainable food systems that will start sometime 2023. The agroecology, which will start about the same time, and the biodiversity partnership, which is underway. And then beyond all of those, beyond the partnerships and the framework programs, there are two collaborative research tools. One is called LIFE, and the other is called WEAVE. So LIFE projects don't have science as the main focus, but actually they're about policy implementation. But regarding GE and how that goes forward, you can well imagine that research could be part of that. And it only provides, I think, 60% of the funding, so you have to get 40% from another source. And then WEAVE is an interesting idea. It's basically a little bit like, has some idea from the IRINETs on the one hand and also from ERC on the other hand. But basically the idea is that there's national research initiatives going on in various places, which could be combined to produce networks, so that if, say, several countries have an area of interest, I don't know, on any subject, there could be a coordinator from one of those countries that pulls together a network. In each case, the funding is coming out of the participating countries, of which there need to be at least 3. So currently, the number of countries participating is not overwhelming, but at least there's Austria, Belgium, Croatia, Czech Republic, Germany, Luxembourg, Norway, Poland, Slovenia, and Sweden, and Switzerland. Hopefully that number will grow. And so it basically uses existing funding programs. I'm not sure how that is going to work in practice, because they somehow have to be coordinated in time to some extent, and of course they're not. Then I want to talk, to move on to the science policy then a little bit, and talking about how we're trying to push for or talk about plant science and its contribution to nutritional security and human health. I like very much the expression, and I've been using it, that food is health care and medicine is sick care. So when the EU is funding healthcare, they should consider food, because eating well and eating properly is a big part to human health. So the first level is that to rediscover and breed from underutilized crops, species, crop wild relatives, incorporate what we can from land races and various kinds of crops, and the rediscovery can diversify our diet and also advance breeding. So diverse crops for diverse diets. Then we expand that a little bit and then talk about the use of metabolic engineering, for example, and new breeding technologies to redesign high-quality crops. And we've heard examples today of what could be involved. So that allows us to then have diverse crops for diverse and nutritious diets. So that's a second step. And then the third level is to promote development of agronomic practices and processing to maintain the nutritional quality that has been bred into the crops. And so there we're talking about diverse crops with diverse cropping systems for diverse and nutritious diets. So the idea is what I'm trying to get across is that we try to integrate the different components so that when there are funding initiatives that you can reach in and across these different areas of funding, so they shouldn't be kind of in silos where the funding doesn't connect together. And then the fourth level comes with the idea that that in fact the diverse crops with enriched and nutritionally active compounds help prevent human diseases. And as we know, there are certainly a lot of examples of those processes. So we connect the diverse crops and cropping systems for nutritious diets to human health, so that things that deal with human health aren't exclusively funding medical research, but also funding plant research and plant genetics, for example, with barley, so that we can develop the things that consumers are eating and get them in the field so that it produces the products. And of course, the last thing is, as we have all these examples today, that it's not just the food, but it's a production and the resilient production. So we can do all this and at the same time have resilient production through water use efficiency and nutrient use efficiency and disease resistance and drought and abiotic stress tolerance. So that gives us a resilience on every scale. So that's sort of what the goal is, and how to pull this together and try to inform the commission and the general public that actually these ideas and research don't exist in a volume. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that all the funding initiatives and the science policy are going to be affected by the last 2 years and our current experience. So, I mean, the COVID pandemic and the war against Ukraine have had multiple impacts and are having multiple impacts from plant science, everything from shifting work patterns and displacing researchers and making it impossible for them to take on new jobs in new places, to issues with reagent supply chain disruptions that we've all experienced. And things such as nitrate shortage in the market will certainly affect interest in nutrient use efficiency and nitrogen fixation, blockage of wheat and sunflower and exports, interest in local food sovereignty and security and diversity of cropping systems in different countries. Fuel prices affecting farmer break-even will increase interest in funding ways of lowering inputs and so on. The current war is having a big impact, literally, on food production in our region. So this is just an image I found, which is outstanding, incredible. It's a field near in eastern Ukraine, and each of those dots is a shell impact on the field. So I mean, this gives you an idea of the difficulty of restoring agricultural production in the region. And of course, we have this massive production of nitrate in the world nitrate, ammonium nitrate supply coming out of Russia that needs to be coped with one way or the other, and has an impact on feeding of countries that have need for food, so that the World Food Program gets 50% of its grain from Ukraine, and the World Food Program's costs have risen as a result by $72 million per month just to get stuff in the current market, let alone the food insecurity in the area that are being targeted by the aggression. So, I mean, this has come home to the FAO. The Director General of the FAO some months ago made the point that there needs to be diversity of domestic production to try to ensure access to healthy diets. Okay, so that's the money, that's the strategy, and now we'll hear about the community. And then I hope I've been provocative enough that we can actually have a discussion afterwards.
Listen, thanks everybody for coming along. It's been a long day. I got off the plane this morning at 2 o'clock and had about 3 hours sleep last night, and I was tired this afternoon, I have to say. So I'm guessing there's going to be lots more like me in the audience who are starting to nod off. So this won't take very long. It certainly won't take an hour. And it's not going to be a big presentation. It's going to be a discussion, hopefully, between us that are sat up here. So yeah, this is to be discussion. Please interrupt at any time that you feel is appropriate. I've asked Niels and Wilma to come up and join me because they're two of the original instigators of what I'm going to tell you just a little bit about. And I do have a few slides just to introduce the topic. So let me give you the background to this. So about probably 9 or 10 months ago, a few of us had a discussion about, partly about succession and partly about the community, our barley community, and how we thought that we had lost something probably over the last 10 years. And it wasn't just the fact that we'd lost something. It was that we needed this next generation of people that didn't benefit from the kind of collaboration and communication that I know I benefited from when I was an earlier career researcher and really helped me push my career forward. I'm I've got some fantastic colleagues in the audience just now. I've had them for 20 or 30 years. And I want the earlier career researchers in the audience to have the same opportunity and collaboration and communication that I had. So 9 or 10 of us, about, let's say 9 or 10 months ago, had a discussion about how we could try and reinvigorate the barley community. We used to have ITME until about 2010, and ITME met twice a year, once at PAG and then once during the year. And then ITME kind of fell to bits around 2010, 2011, when the genomics era started, because the wheat people went in one direction and the barley people were really left, actually. Does anybody know what ITME is? ITME. Okay, that's amazing. So this is exactly the problem. So ITME is the International Triticale Mapping Initiative. It was formed, Jerry, you'll know when it was formed. Jerry, when was ITME formed? A long time ago. And basically it was a forum for wheat and barley researchers to get together to discuss science. I mean, that's what it was. And we met twice a year, as I mentioned, once at PAG, once during the middle of the year, somewhere nice, usually somewhere nice. In fact, always somewhere nice. But that disappeared around 2010, particularly when the wheat community decided to effectively divorce themselves from that linkage and follow their own track. And you got the International Wheat Genome Sequencing Initiative, and then latterly, or very soon after, led by Niels and colleagues at the IPK, and the Barley Sequencing or Barley Genomics Consortium. But we felt that left a lot of people behind. So the whole fact that it's based on technology and only a few places could do it meant that the activity and the interactions were focused on a relatively small number of groups. And we thought that had to change, particularly now as we move into the, I'll call it the post-genomics era, when we need to know more about gene function. We need to know more about how to annotate genes in the genomes that we already have sequenced. We need to do more about how we use the data that we've generated over the last 10 years. And the only way that can happen is at a community level. It can't happen in individual labs because there's just too much to do. So we set up this idea where we would want to kind of not replicate the IWGSC, but effectively have a mini barley genetics symposium every fortnight. So the original idea was that we couldn't engage everybody every 2 weeks, obviously, or twice a year from scratch. And we thought we would kick this off by having seminars about barley every 2 weeks for a year. And the reason we put a year on that time limit was because we wanted to see whether or not there was the appetite within the community to maintain this past a year. At the moment, it's organised by, there were 10 signatories to this letter. Niels and Wilma are 2 of them. And the letter was sent out to a whole range of people. I think we tried to use modern technology like Twitter and other things. Niels might have done that. I used my email lists. And on that email, on this message that went out to the community, we gave an email address. I think it's at the bottom there, https://bit.ly, whatever it is. You can see it for yourself. And what that does is it subscribes you to a mailing list, effectively, that gets information about this, what we call Barley Community Initiative. And the Barley Community Initiative at the moment is very simple. As I mentioned, we have seminars every 2 weeks. An email is sent out with an Eventbrite link to register for that seminar. If you register for the seminar, you'll be sent a link to join it. If you don't register to the Eventbrite seminar in the first instance, nowadays what we've done is sent a link out in the morning of the seminar to everybody. So it's in your inbox. If you want to attend the seminar, you can just click on the link in your inbox. What I can tell you is that the list of contributors now to the sign-up page is around 250 barley scientists. So it's a reasonable number from our community. And if you're interested in this, I really want to encourage you to go onto the website and just sign up. And you'll get the email lists to the seminars that are either been given, they're on the web, or sign up for the ones in the future.
Just being curious, who is already following these seminars?
Hey.
Yeah, it's fun, eh?
So there's about between a third and a half perhaps.
Yeah.
So the 2/3 of you in the audience, if you haven't signed up and you want to sign up, you want to get this information and you want to engage with the rest of us, please take a note of the email address and then just sign on. You just type it in and it takes you to a registration page, you enter your name and stuff. It's all kept confidentially. I've lost where it was now. Okay, so what we decided to do anyway, as I mentioned at the very beginning, was just try this for 1 year. We started back in January, I think, and we're going to try it for 1 year. At the moment, it's being organised by myself, Wilma, Niels, and some other people located in Dundee in an organisation called the International Barley Hub. So the International Barley Hub are taking responsibility for running the seminars, actually the day-to-day job of making sure that speakers have their presentations loaded, are ready, everything's working and communicating with everybody. Is Jessie here? So Jessie is not here. She's a PhD student that works with me, and she's responsible. She's taken responsibility for all of this stuff of organising the seminars. At the moment, there are 3 people that are organising the speakers for the seminars. Vic Carollo-Blake from the US, Joanne Russell from Dundee, and Matt Tucker from Adelaide in Australia. We actually want one more. We'd like to get somebody from Eastern Asia, from China or Japan, to join that group to organise the seminars. We try to make the seminars at times where the majority of the audience can take part. So, for example, for a speaker from America, they will speak early in the morning. And in Europe, that time will probably be 3, 4, or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If it's a speaker from Europe, it's generally around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we just try to suit the time zone of the speaker. So this letter went out in early January to obviously a number of people in the audience, but not everybody. And if you want to sign up, please sign up there. So we have the seminars. What we then do with the seminars is we record them and we put them online. And you can go on at any time onto the website and look at any of these seminars that have been given online. We stream them along 2 different kind of tracks. The first track is that we want general seminars from the barley supply chain. So we've had some fantastic seminars from agronomists, from barley maltsters, from the distilling industry, from people that work on heritage land races, from the farming community. All these people just bring some knowledge to the table that, I mean, very often I don't know what they're talking about or didn't know what they were talking about until they actually told us. And we get some information about the detail. The second stream is the science stream. So we've had, again, some people in the audience here have already given presentations to the Barley Community Initiative. Laura is one in the audience. I'm trying to think who else there is here in the audience that's given one. Ayal Friedman's given one. And one of the things we're trying to do in these seminars is not just to allow Laura or Ayal to speak, or is to allow them to introduce a junior scientist from their lab. I say junior, I hate that term. A less experienced scientist from their lab to speak to the community, to introduce themselves, to get their name known and understood, and to get their face known, so that when they meet somebody at the next conference, that wherever they go to, some people will say, I think I know you, I've seen you somewhere, maybe I've heard you talk. And the idea would be, yes, I did hear you talk. I heard you talk at one of these seminars that was held every fortnight. So at the moment, there's about a dozen or so seminars that you can go to and check these things online. We took a slight departure last week, actually, from just giving seminars to 2 people giving talks about community resources that we felt would be really valuable for people's research. One was about some of the new developments in grain genes, and one was about a database called Orna, which is Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic for barley. Is about a transcript database. There's about 5,000 RNA-seq datasets in that database that you can just log into and find out where and when your gene's expressed if you have a favorite gene. So that was really successful. In general, I mentioned that we have about 250 people listed onto the database. For each one of these Eventbrite things, we get around 120 to 130 people register for the seminars, and then usually about between 50 and 70 people actually turn up on the day. And I don't know how many watch the seminars after their day, but I know that when I miss one, I go and watch the seminar online. It's just as good watching it online, to be fair. So here's just an idea of some of the upcoming people we have speaking between now and Christmas. We have Blake Myers and one of his postdocs, Sebastian Belanger, Sarah McKim, and one of her experienced researchers actually now, Chiara Campoli, Anna Badea from Canada, Romana Ray from UK, works on disease resistance, Robert Brueggemann, if he's in the audience still, from the US, Maria von Korf, and there's another couple that I could add to that as well. So we're starting to get this list of speakers now fairly well established. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's administered through this thing called the International Barley Hub. Again, many of you won't know about this initiative. We've about 10 years ago, I started to try and get funding to build a new building in Dundee to do barley research. The reason's simple. Most important crop in Scotland underpins the whisky industry. The beer industry is worth about 5 billion a year in the whisky industry itself. Some figures that you won't know: 3 to 4 million bottles of whisky sold a day. 23 million pints of beer drunk in the UK each day. It's a really important crop. Economically, it's much more important than wheat. Economic end value of barley is much more important than wheat, and that's only for 25 to 30% of the crop. Remember that when you're telling your funders that barley is more important economically than wheat, because they probably won't believe you. So as I mentioned, it's administered through the IBH. This is just a cartoon of what the building will look like. It's where we will be located in about 14, 15 months. So I mentioned it wasn't going to be a seminar. I've already spoken too long. There are some points up here which I thought perhaps you might offer some comment on from the floor. So the questions really are, what did this group feel about the current online presentations? So if you've seen them, and I know probably from the hands up that we had earlier that many of you will have seen some of the presentations. The question is, are they good and do you want them to continue? If they are good and you want them to continue, then we have to continue to log in and to attend them and so on and so forth. But more important than that, what we really want you to do is get involved. Get involved in helping to organise them. Get involved in helping to understand how we move this forward from simply 2-week seminars to something that's more concrete than simply listening to somebody across a video link. So is there an appetite to continue after the end of 2022? That's when we said we would finish, that the current people that are organising these seminars would finish. And what we really want to happen is that people, mid-career scientists, early career scientists in the barley community put their hand up and say, I can do that. We'll continue to organise this through the IBH, so there's no organisation involved. The only criteria at the moment is that you would be prepared to say, I would quite like to get involved in organising the next, with others, the next set of seminars that are coming around for the next 6 months or the next year. So if there's anybody in the audience that would really like to do that, either come and see me later or Niels or Wilma. So yeah, how do we build interactions outside of the online presentations? Somebody in the audience, Ivan actually, suggested we have topic groups. And already there's been quite a significant appetite for the idea of having topic groups. And the topic groups don't have to be within this Barley Community Initiative, they don't have to sit within it. But if we get a topic group off the ground and you manage to get some funding through international or national funding, I think we've been successful. I mean, that's the kind of success we're looking for, is bringing new groups of people together to increase their chances of getting some research funding to do some work on barley. How can the BCI, the Barley Community Initiative, help enhance collaboration and avoid direct competition? So already I think we've had several introductions to slides where people have said exactly the same thing. And what would be quite nice, I think, to know in advance is, what are you doing? Are you doing the same thing as me? Am I wasting my time here? Are you going to scoop me and my project? If I know that you're working on this thing, can we communicate at least and talk about what we're doing? Because maybe we could add value. How can we support other regular international barley symposia? So IBGS at the moment is once every 4 years. Personally, I don't think that's enough to maintain a community. And I leave it for you to ask whether or not you think it is or not. So if we need funding to support any planned activity, how do we secure it and how do we manage it? And Alan gave us some examples, I hope. If he's there, maybe he'll answer the questions about how we as a community could tap into some of that money within the European Union. That, can't remember how many billions you said, 9 billions of funding. How can we tap into that? And then, of course, the next steps, if any. So I asked these two guys to come up to sit with me, and they've said nothing because I've probably spoken for way too long. But maybe I could just ask for some feedback. Does anybody want to offer some feedback about whether, let's ask the first question, is this a worthwhile initiative?
I think it's a great idea, because the one thing we've learned in the last 2 years is also how to use Zoom and so on to communicate with each other. We don't have to wait for physical meetings, and we don't have to use printed newsletters and so on to reach each other. And for example, what you're talking about can then I mean, if you have a topic group, for example, that can then form like a cost action, so you actually get funded to travel and see each other besides. But this could be integrated in discussions we've been having about what to do with the newsletter, which could also be electronic and online and spontaneous more than printed once a year.
Yeah, and I think one of the things which I don't want to restrict this to the European Union and the UK slightly outside the European Union, but the European Union does offer opportunities for collaborations from across the world. I think you said that quite clearly. So there are opportunities for the US, for Australia and other organisations, other countries to join into effectively European funded research. Anybody else like to say anything?
So I come from the experience of the people working on wheat, and in the wheat community there is it's becoming very popular to have this expert working group. It is like the topic group we were saying before. And I thought this is, in my experience, was a very good opportunity to make a small group focusing on specific topics. And for instance, the typical activity of a group start with a position paper, a review paper. So the people start to work together on some specific aim, and then be opportunity to develop collaborative projects, particularly if you want to collect people working around a specific topic, and each of the people put some money in the pot. That is a good way to know each other and start to work together.
I agree. I mean, would anybody be interested in establishing a topic group or a... No. I mean, it doesn't matter.
I think especially for young starting up researchers, this can be a great opportunity to join into networks and to learn from the experience also of the more established researchers and tap into that knowledge also and contacts. But I was curious about Ivan actually, because you suggested this. So do you have any suggestions from your side how you would like to carry on this type of topic groups?
I don't see Wendy here, but editing would be one. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting you to set up editing.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a little bit along the lines that Luigi was mentioning, right? And what I suggested, particularly from my own point of view, was, for example, a topic group on functional genetics, right? And it doesn't have to be that the group works on a specific topic, but rather what can each person in the group can contribute from the more expertise. So, I mean, my expertise is STEM development, but I mean, the techniques that I use in my group can be of use for other people working on other topics. So it will be more to collect expertises and being able to see what can each other do to help each other. So, but one topic, for example, would be functional genetics, another could be gene editing indeed. I was just writing down here, I mean, also the sessions of the symposium can also guide a little bit the kind of groups that could come together.
How do you put this on? So, I mean, one idea that was just floated before we started here was that in terms of organizing the seminars moving forward, we could organize them on the basis of topic groups. So we could have small groups of people identifying the people they wanted to speak for maybe 2 of the next 12 seminars or 3 of the next 12 seminars. And then we rotate amongst different topics so that everybody's interests are covered. Laura.
Yeah, I think this is a very nice idea of having these topic groups. And another topic that I think would be quite timely right at the moment is to build some critical mass for a curated annotation. People that are especially interested in some gene families or something like this, they can take the time to even on small number of genes each group, but that can really improve the quality of some annotations. I don't know if there's any plans that I'm not aware of, but for example, I guess several of us have noticed some differences between the different assemblies, some gene models appearing in some assemblies and missing from others. And so I think that's the kind of thing that incrementally can be put together by people interested in specific genes and gene families. So that would be another topic group that could be offered. I am very much in favor of continuing beyond 2022. I was telling Robbie, I really look forward to these seminars. I enjoy them very much. If I can't be online at the time, I watch them afterwards. So I'm in favor of going on for sure.
Thank you. I think this pretty good idea. I like it, but I'm thinking for the future whether it's possible we take abroad a hybrid form. So one the first thing I was thinking, can we also set like a social chat group? Say, for example, everyone involved. We not only say every time everyone need to all get together on online seminars, so we can always have people to chat, have exchange ideas, post some informations, and then also can have regular like seminars. Then even we have some bit of face-to-face and the meetings like you mentioned previous international treaty and genome initiative work, something like that. I think it's a pretty good idea. We can further expand it in the multiple platforms.
Gustavo, the microphone is off.
It was just building up on what Rishi said about the WIN initiative, expert working groups. Just to let you know that in the WIN community, there are topics and expert working groups on those topics, but they cross-reference each other. So every now and then, by working in a particular topic, you realize that you need to know more about other things that are not in your topic, but you need them for something. There were some discussions today about phenotyping for people working on genes. And probably you have no idea what the genes are useful for if you don't phenotype them properly. And that is another discussion. But the expert working groups in those particular topics cross the borders of the topics. And every now and then they do meetings together or write those white papers together or something. The advantage they had was that at the very beginning, there was the expectation that they were going to raise a huge amount of money and there would be funding for being there. Actually, all started, if I recall it well, perhaps Rishi recalls better than me, but if I recall it well, it all started with people of the WIT community participating of the G20 multinational, these G20 meetings, convincing the ministers of agriculture that funding wheat research was essential for food security. Probably they didn't hear you say the barley is more valuable than wheat, but they had that advantage. So at the very beginning, and they do actually have a little bit of funding, so not a lot, but at least there is some funding to organize some of the meetings they have every now and then, probably once a year or so. Not much, but at least a little bit of that. The main reason is the actual interest of the people, so I think it would be a good idea probably to have something like that. I just subscribed, and here, sorry, I wasn't even aware of this community. So, but I think that even though I am a member of this only for the last 5 seconds, I would suggest to try to focus on particular topics and make smaller groups more focused on things they are interested in.
Well, may I make a comment? Or, I mean, the seminar series that Robbie introduced you, and many of you are participating, this was really initiated out of the feeling that due to COVID and the lack of conferences, that the community needed some stimulus again to, become active again. But when you presented and you mentioned ITME, I realized that I was close to the Bali community from the beginning, basically because of ITME. The ITMI, the International Treaty Mapping Initiative, was really the active interface in wheat and barley research because of the initiation of EST sequencing, the mapping, comparative mapping resources. There were, at that time, we couldn't think of sequencing any of these genomes. So there was really a need for collaboration, and we needed to use all the resources that were there. And wheat and barley were basically working only on rice resources and try to map them in the different genomes. So there was a very strong identification factor. But now I think the suggestions that came from Luigi, building expert working groups in different communities, this is working for areas where people identify really the need for action. But these initiatives also have initiated quite a number of expert working groups that are not active, and they are just paper tigers. Yeah, and so the question is really also more an open call for opinions, if there are any, especially with the young scientists. What do you expect from a community? Do you see yourself already as a part of a community, or do you ask yourself all the time, how can I become a community, or what is a community? So one question was coming up in the introduction of Robbie, is a 4-year term for a conference like this sufficient? And I realized I didn't question that before, because I was, when I joined that area, under the impression that ITME meets anyway all the time. And when ITME disappeared, we had still the annual Bali workshop at PAC, but now, as there were no conferences, there was nothing. And 2 years, that's already almost, even we are in the 3rd year, that's a term of a PhD project, so you lose it, start to lose a generation or the next generation. So the question is, do we really have to, kickstart again from scratch and say, what are the goals for the Bali community? Is the Bali community having the necessary critical mass? Is there also time again to initiate more frequent interaction with the other serials, as there are? Martin has mentioned it. We talk here about pangenome, not pangenomes anymore, but pangenous genomes, or in fact, we talk about the pantriticity, yeah. And so, and as soon as you go more into this broad direction, there are also people that you can bring into the community. So that's more an open call. It's the discussion should not go only in the direction if you want to make suggestions for the next seminar speakers, or if you want to organize it. Do you see yourself ready for becoming part of a more active group in Bali, or at least would you be happy to see a more active group of different generation Bali researchers working together towards these goals?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Paolo Pesaresi, University of Milano. I'm just new to the community. Actually, I started with Bali together with Luigi Stank, and then I had a break of 20 years in Arabidopsis. So I think what is missing based on the experience of Arabidopsis is that we miss the community of Arabidopsis was created around the resources. In Arabidopsis, we had a wonderful TER, the Arabidopsis Information Resource Center. I think what we miss here is a BR, the Barley Information Resource Center.
Don't take the message of my next seminar here on Wednesday.
Okay. What we miss is indeed to have a common site where we share all resources. It would be a dream one day to go there, click on a gene, and ask for a bag of seeds and have it in the lab. That's what is happening in Arabidopsis. It would be great to have a gene with all the SNP, all the knockouts, and ask for seeds and having back to the lab and start studying it. And the other thing that disorients me in the barley community is the lack of a reference cultivar in barley. In Arabidopsis, we started with Columbia null, and everybody was working Columbia null in order to have comparison of data. I understand the power of studying genetic variability, but I think something that is in common to most of us is missing. Do we go for Morex? Do we go for Golden Promise? Do we go for Sebastian? I think a decision here should be taken as well. Thank you.
Yeah, a few additional comments. So first of all, don't make a copy of WIT initiative. So we do not need the infrastructure of WIT initiative. So we just can keep the idea to have some topic groups. And for instance, a topic group could be a group of people which are interested to explore the wild barley or the diversity in wild barley, something like that. And then another point that I really suggest, we could make as a community some training courses. I mean, to organize a training on specific topic, a specific expertise which is useful for barley or not necessarily for barley. Like, for instance, genome editing barley. The presentation of today made in a training course where the people comes, learn, and meet other people doing the same. This is something we try in the wheat community, and it was really effective.
I think that's a nice suggestion and could be easily an extension of the seminar series organized through the hub. Yeah.
Well, for the informatics-based training courses, that could easily happen remotely, and I think, yeah. So I'm conscious that we've already kept you for a long time. Before we close this, I think I'm getting the impression there's consensus in the audience that we would like to see this continue. For those of you who haven't been to any of the seminars or seen any, please go online. They're free. You can click on the seminar and just see what they're like. Some of the ones about agronomy or grain composition, things that you don't necessarily know anything about, they're fabulous. You learn things. You really learn things. So just before I finish, is there anybody that would consider themselves an early career or mid-career researcher that wants to say anything? Because I'm conscious again that the older guys and women have said things. Would anybody like to put their hand up and say something?
Okay, I'm not sure if I considered mid-career or early career. So my name is Sonia. I'm just an assistant professor at the University College Dublin, and this is my first barley meeting. I came from rice research, many years in rice research, and I've been working in barley quite recently. So I think that having a community like that, it's very valuable for me. It's like Laura was saying, if I cannot attend the seminars, I'll just click on them whenever I want to, and I just hear it, and I have been learning a lot, which is very important. So I think it's a very good initiative. I also like the idea of having specific groups and topics, but I also agree that it's very important, the communication within groups, and having that loop of information circulating, and training courses as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Would anybody like to put their hand up if they'd be willing to help organize things like this? Fantastic. Maybe if you send me an email or send it to the address here. That's not the address, that's the website. That's a URL. Sorry, it's not a Twitter address.
A comment regarding help. You're asking for the young ones. And what we're lacking, I include myself, maybe not age-wise, but experience in the barley. I started in 19 as a breeder in Norway. We don't have a network for barley in Norway. We have one breeder, and we have one university. And the rest is happening in Scandinavia for us, and it goes far down to Denmark. And there was a PPP, and that is over.
Yeah.
So we're also looking for some continuation there, and we're struggling for a frame. So I'd be willing to help, but I don't know what I can offer because I don't have a network. I don't have knowledge of the people relevant to barley. So I can only offer time, which I should probably use to learn. But that's a bit the situation and maybe the conflict we have, that we have the old experienced people looking for the younger ones to get involved, and have the younger ones looking up to the older people or experienced people trying to
just name it as it is.
I mean, it's correlated. Let's put it that way. So that's maybe a bit of a dilemma. So something in between can maybe connect those two extreme groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think there may well still be a role for somebody that has been involved in this already to continue just to get people used to what needs to be done and so on and so forth. So I don't think we would take 5 people that have never done this before and just leave them a room to get on with it. So there would be some help. I've got one more slide that I wanted to show people, and it's two requests. I've already asked the first one. If there are any volunteers in the audience who'd like to give a presentation or a software demo as part of this community initiative, let us know. So that's as well as taking over some of the responsibility for running it. And then from my organisation, this relates to something that Alan said, but we have an organisation on site called the Milnfield Trust, and they would like to sponsor a PhD student from Ukraine to do a PhD in Dundee in the Barley programme. So I have no collaborators in Ukraine, and I have no access to undergraduate students in Ukraine. If anybody has access to or knows of people in Ukraine who might have undergraduate students that are wanting to do a PhD in barley science, then I'd be very happy if you could send that to my address, which is now up here on that slide. So if you want to get involved, send an email to this address. If you know people in Ukraine that might have students that want to do a PhD in Dundee, please get them to send an email or send me an email with their contact details that I can contact them. So listen, thanks very much everybody for coming. I realise we've put beer time back by about an hour, and it's now going to be fully satisfied, I hope. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
I have 4 encouraging prizes, and thank you for the most questions of this day. And we have 4 winners, and then there will be 1 more prize. So applause is for those who were questioning the most.
That's a Barley Community Prize.